First of all, I want to say I'm responding because not because I feel indicted, but because I feel alleviated by what it is that you had mentioned in this last video. And the thing is, the thing that I want to talk about is that where you ended your video was in the notion that being within a representation of the world begs the question of what it means to be clear, to be in the world. But you had also started the video with what I'll say is this. Well, you not started the video, but within your video you talked about we are forward. We have a posterior and anterior, and that the posterior allows for the world to disclose itself to us. Well, but then you mentioned hands, and if hands had eyes like in Pan's Labyrinth, and you could turn them around, such as in this painting here, not turn them around, but as if the very posture of one's being, right, is distorted to the world, or it's blinded to the temporality of the world, then one can change the difference between the natural world and an aesthetic artifice of the world might be what I'm discussing here, where I would say the aesthetic artifice of the world as one experiments with it is a new sort of bricolage. It's a new sort of collage of anachronistic histories that are found, and they're found atemporally, and so basically when I was listening to your video talking about the posteriority and the world disclosing itself to that, I was thinking about this painting that I'm working on and how the very posture is pointing backwardly, as if the very point of this gentleman in the painting is to point behind him anachronistically, and this is done because in a way it points to what it means to get caught up within Descartes. It means to speak of obsolescence no more, to say all historic, degenerative, degraded, inflated phloem within the tree of the canon, the history, the inherited history of canonized structures, which include Descartes' thoughts as being a grand masterpiece, should be, could be, can be discussed tribally as a way in which individuals can experiment on the world, and to make a distinction between experiment as begging the question of what it means to experience the world, right? So as one experiments in an episteme, they are also experimenting with the world. Now, as an artist, the formalism of depiction can be, it could be a naturalistic depiction where I could be painting landscapes, I could be painting the world, or and that's a certain type. There's a certain type of relief from that, sensual relief from doing that, or one can get caught up within. Speaking of, okay, well, this line is the episteme, the anachronistic episteme, and these two figures are the ontological figures on the outside that aren't clear right now, and to make a depiction of that. So to get caught up within. Kind of like this, you also brought up humans. You know, humans were time. We spend a lot of time. We're investing time. If humans laid eggs and there was an incubation time, we wouldn't be able to treat the organism quite the same way. There'd be a shell around them. We wouldn't be able to treat the egg, the embryo within the egg. We'd have to wait for it to attach with kind of a nice heat, or maybe some pressure, or a little bit of both, something like that, and then it would hatch, and it would hatch out of itself. So to hatch out of one's historic Descartesian episteme and find one locked within this geometric space, that's one thing, right? And so that's to give birth to oneself. There's another thing to go hiking and to enter into caves, to go spelunking, as if the cave itself is so old. It's older than my being. It's probably older than humanity's being. But this cave is nevertheless there, and it echoes what it would be like to get back into the Cartesian episteme, to get back into the shell where one can experiment and create these geometries of thought, right? And so there's one thing between giving birth, as where you make your metaphor of humans are sleeping. First you make the distinction, well, humans are nervous systems, and then humans, plants are sleeping animals, and then humans are like that. And this is to rotate on the triadic fence of the ontology, the episteme, and the axiology, or the value. And so to find a value, to move axiology, I'm going to find value in inverting what is known to be naturally the ontology as first, as coming first. And I'm going to purposely beg the question and place the episteme within that as primacy, as an ode, an anachronistic ode to a Descartes bubble, or a Wittgensteinian Tractatus Logos logical positivistic world, right? What this does is this creates a bivalence when one sits as axiology proper, right, and making it benign. They can look at the distinction between the episteme and the ontology. There's some play there. There's some consideration there. And what I'm suggesting is this, is that when one sits at this top, right, then this will allow a bivalence of discourse. And bivalence of discourse, this would mean that everything that you're mentioning to put ontology as primacy, you would have to still look at the grammatical substance that makes the distinction between humans as plants, as like plants, and humans as not like plants. You would continue to use an authoritative disambiguation that coats around, I'd say, the Heideggerian considerations. And so, once again, as Heidegger is deconstructed by Derrida, not by Derrida pulling him apart, but by Derrida giving him over himself entire to all of his reads, right? As if to separate from with a new form of grammar. And then he speaks of bricolage, and he speaks of spinning, what it means to find oneself historically within a world of accents and articulations. And so maybe your focus is there, right? Because you had mentioned as Pontiff and Heidegger are central authors that you're making your themas about. What I'm discussing is something more of an experiment of adjusting the scope of the axiology relative to the bivalence between episteme and ontology when the initial birth is given and when one re-enters a cave in which to investigate what it means to refract in shadow, right? Knowing that the logical structure is in one, knowing that more of a poetic description, I'll say it's a poetic description of how the world unfolds to oneself, to understand one's being in the world so as to avoid solipsism, that these are plays, and that there can be play on it, and that it's the job of the street artist to make play there, right? Not to ruin my own experiment, which is this very channel, right? Which is this very channel of trying to beg the question of the very grammar that's used for truth capture systems found within religions, right? And I say this based on finding the book of Das Puk, and the book of Das Puk, of course, as a religious text, very, very important. But that'll be for the future to decide. Anyway, I hope I've made some sense. I hope I'm speaking to you now at some level here, because I think that the manner in which you adhere to the Heideggerian description is not your own, but you're using it. It's your tool. But he himself is anachronistic now. There's a whole future of blends to go on, and I guess that's why I'm opposed the ivory tower, the very truth capture itself, wondering when one will see themselves as a history of anachronism and let themselves escape out a secondary modal flyby